How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today I'm really excited because we're going to be taking a look at the Hack Slash Nailbiter crossover. This is really cool. Hack Slash and Nailbiter are both serial killer comics. They're both some of the best that modern horror had to offer, and they're gonna cross over. If you guys aren't reading either of these series, or if you're reading one and not the other, I definitely recommend checking them out. Hack Slash is about Cassie Hack, a final girl who, after surviving a slasher, goes on the road to hunt other slashers. Then we get Nailbiter, and that's about a small town in the middle of nowhere. No one knows why, but 15 different serial killers were born there. These are both great comics, and now they're coming together. I will say also that this is a two-parter. It's two separate stories, but they are better if you read them together. The stories themselves are only like 16 pages for some reason, so it's a little more meat on the bones if you read them back to back. Plus the themes tie in together, and the ending when you read both of them is much more satisfying. But we have part 1, Nailbiter slash Hack Slash, made by the Nailbiter team, collected in Volume 5. And then we get Hack Slash slash Nailbiter, made by the Hack Slash team and collected in Omnibus 6, despite the fact that it takes place in the middle of Omnibus 2. I'll get to the timeline stuff in a minute. But anyway, this is a really cool crossover for what it does really with the characters. It's actually a prequel to the Nailbiter series, so this is before Edward Warren would be arrested for being the newest buckaroo butcher, the Nailbiter. So we get him and Cassie sharing a very similar stigma. The idea that you're from Buckaroo, you're probably going to be a serial killer, right? And then the idea with Cassie's mom being a slasher, and she has it in the back of her head, what if one day I grow up to be a slasher just like my mom? It's two different people dealing with the same idea that one day they may turn evil, and we know that Edward Warren would become the Nailbiter, but Cassie would try to stick to the straight and narrow. So to see two characters early on in their timelines having the same deal, but knowing one of them's going to go one way and one the other, is a very interesting concept, and it really drives the heart of the story. Both of them also feature unique killers for them to go up against, and some really fun action set pieces. That being said, as I hinted at earlier, both stories are a little on the shorter side. They're 16 pages for some reason instead of the full 22, and they do move by a little bit quick. And also, for whatever reason, there is a bit of a lack of some characters. I know that this is a prequel to Nailbiter, so sadly we can't get Finch in here. I would have loved Cassie to meet Finch though, but like Sheriff Crane's missing, and then in the second part of the story you don't see that much of Warren. And in the first part of the story, Vlad just wanders off for some reason for a good chunk of it. So Cassie is the main character, but I would have loved to see more of the extended universes interacting with each other, and I wish we could have at least gotten Crane and Allison here, but whatever. There is a little bit of a shortness, a little bit of a lack of more of the characters, but overall, it's a really solid idea, and I really did like to see these two worlds come together, and I think it has some cool ideas behind it. I guess if you want a more further detailed analysis, let's switch to the close-up camera. I'll talk about some plot specifics, I'll show you guys a little of the story and the art, but I won't ruin the endings for you, so no major spoilers. But without further ado, let's switch to the close-up camera. Alright, here we are inside the castle taking a closer look at the Nailbiter Hack Slash crossover. First thing I want to show you is an Omnibus 6. This copy of the Hack Slash timeline, which I really do love this chart. And we can see that Hack Slash and Nailbiter Part 1 was right after Comic Book Carnage, and part 2 is after Little Children. So yeah, this does take place super early on in the series. I mean, that right there, just right after Volume 1, that's crazy. Anyway, for the first part of this crossover, we will go to Nailbiter Volume 5. Now actually, if you flip to the back, we can see that most of the Nailbiters collect 5 issues apiece, but this one also has the hack slash story, so it is a little extra thick. And cracking it open, we can see the cover. I really do love this cover. Cassie about to whack Warren on the head while he's eating those bloody nails. Doesn't happen exactly in the story, but I still really like it. Anyway, after this, let's go into the story proper. No major spoilers, but I do want to take a look at a little bit of the story, a little bit of the art, and show you guys some of it, but I'll be avoiding the end bits. Anyway, we open up with one of the Buckaroo Butchers, Mr. Fatal, and his gag, his sort of what he goes about doing things, is really interesting. He's a serial killer who suffers from intrusive thoughts, and he decides to enact those thoughts out on other people instead of himself. So here he's like, what if I put my razor in my mouth instead of my toothbrush? Well, let me find out that on you. And we do get a transition into the fair through this really cool splash page. Some of the other examples are later in the comic, but you know, standing on the edge of a cliff and wondering what if you just jumped off, seeing a nail gun and going, I shouldn't shoot myself with this, or you know, hey, there's some sharks in there, what would happen if I jumped into the water? A really cool, interesting killer there. But anyway, we then jump to Cassie and Vlad going to this fair. She's picked up a few leads the media missed. For example, a lot of the people that have gone missing have disappeared while they were having fun, and she starts to eye up the crowd. I also really do like how Mike Henderson, the Nailbiter artist, draws Cassie. Really cool to see her in the Nailbiter style. Vlad's also cool with his more angular mask. It's just too bad that we don't get to see more of them in this world. Anyway, Cassie talks about eyeing out suspicious people, and that draws her immediately to Warren. Vlad decides to go off so Cassie can sneak more inconspicuously, however, maybe not inconspicuously enough, as Warren eyes her almost immediately. Now, it's cool that this is before he was the Nailbiter, so he hasn't been arrested, and he's just another guy that Cassie can talk to, and they just quite openly and quickly start saying, hey, I'm looking for the Mr. Fatal killer, and he says the same thing. Turns out that Warren's from Buckaroo and tells Cassie all about the Buckaroo Butchers, what she wasn't familiar with, which I do find a little bit strange. You think Cassie would know about it, even though it is a bit more of an obscure piece of trivia at this point. We will also get this moment from Warren where he can't help but notice Cassie's nails, and she's like, don't be a creep there. And that's when they see the Ferris wheel, which was supposed to be down, has turned on, and they go and start to investigate. Won't spoil too much more in the finale other than that, but actually a really, really cool action sequence. After that, we have the hack slash portion of this story, and it is worth noting that each story is written by their respective creative teams. And here we have art by Emilio Laiso, who was the same artist that did the recent Son of Sawain story. Flipping open the book, we get a pretty cool cover. Again, another cover that's cool but doesn't actually happen. We see this new luchador-themed Buckaroo Butcher, and we get to see Cassie holding her bat up to Warren's face, saying, I have a nail for you to bite. It's a fun cover, but again, doesn't exactly happen in the story. We open up in this pretty fun scene where they're getting free Wi-Fi from a coffee shop in Portland, and Vlad's like, hey, the people here kind of dress like you, and Cassie's like, I'm nothing like these hipsters. And while she's talking, she's checking the email for leads, and we get to see that Edward Warren, the Nailbiter, although they don't know that yet, has sent him an email saying, hey Cassie, your mother who was a slasher I found evidence that maybe she was born in Buckaroo, and your father, who's missing, maybe he went down here and suffered some terrible fate while trying to solve the mystery, and this obviously shakes Cassie to her core, and she has to go and investigate. And I do like reading this right after reading Little Children, because Little Children was Cassie investigating this other scientist, trying to find out what her father was up to, so placing this story with this potential lead right after that is really interesting. Anyway, they go to the Buckaroo Murder Store, although then called the Museum of Serial Killers and Gift Shops, and they see that they are serving merchandise. Lunch Lady Gravy. And yeah, I do like the idea. This is a whole thing in Nailbiter with this gift shop and how it's kind of disrespectful, and now Cassie gets to see it firsthand. Anyway, the gift shop guy is here, and he has his assistant Pedro, who is this really big, strong guy, and welcomes Cassie to town and says that Ed had to go away for something super special, but you can deal with me, and she is totally uncertain about not being with the person she said she was going to. She, when she talked about how she related to Ed because both had this sort of stigma about their lives, about how they weren't going to be killers, but people suspected them to be, and that's part of the reason why she came in addition to the mystery. But yeah, sort of going, oh man, my friend was supposed to be here, and now he's not. And now this guy is saying to find the clues I have to drive out into the middle of nowhere. It's just ringing a few alarm bells, and yeah, spooky night. They say this is Cassie's father's grave, but what's that name on the grave? Oh, it's Vlad, and he pushes him into the tombstone, and it turns out that this guy is, of course, another Buckaroo butcher. I won't spoil how this final fight plays out, but I will say it does transition to a pretty interesting setting and does feature Cassie and Vlad, as the cover depicts, going up against a luchador-themed wrestler. It's pretty fun. But yeah, I do like the sort of time jump between the two issues. First meeting Warren, and then like having him in your head for a few years as someone who's a potential ally. You're not gonna get what you expected. It's a cool idea to compare and contrast between these two characters and how they tie into both series quite nicely. And yeah, that idea that Cassie thinks she has someone who she can trust, but we of course as an audience know better. It's some really cool stuff in here, a great way to tie the two series together, and I honestly wish we got even more of this, but overall, what we had was a pretty fun crossover. I really did like it, and it's always cool to see Hack Slash meet another story. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Image Comics playlist, where you can see my reviews for both Nailbiter and Hack Slash. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.